Michael Jordan is without a doubt one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Many would argue, the best. His playing style earned him nicknames like Air Jordan and the GOAT. He changed the way everyone looked at the sport and brought it to new heights. But when was the greatest player at his greatest? Today we're going to analyze stats, achievements, and defining moments to determine Jordan's career lasted 15 seasons and 1,072 games. But let's start at the beginning. Not that far back. Michael Jordan was, of course, selected first in the 1984 draft.
Select Hakeem Olajuwon of the University of Houston.
Alright, so Jordan was selected second in the 1984 NBA draft.
Portland selects Sam Bowie, University of Kentucky.
Oh, well, this is understandable too, because many people actually think Sam Bowie is the greatest player of all time. So as I was saying, Jordan was drafted third.
The Chicago Bulls pick Michael Jordan.
He was in fact selected third, but he spent no time separating himself from the other players. In his first season in the league, he finished third in scoring, just behind Larry Bird. For comparison purposes, in the 2015-2016 season, the highest scoring rookie was Karl Anthony Towns, with 18.3 points per game, number 26 on the scoring list. This helped him win the 1984 Rookie of the Year, but the Bulls still ended with a losing record and did not make a playoff appearance. The most notable things from the 1984-1985 season: Rookie of the Year award and third in scoring. Now, the 1986 season provided him with some of the lowest numbers of his career. Just a few games into the season, Jordan experienced a foot injury that kept him out for the next 64 games. The Bulls' record that season was 30-52, but they somehow still managed to make the playoffs, where they lost in the first round to the Boston Celtics. The most memorable thing from this year is probably Michael Jordan's 63-point performance in that playoff series. The Celtics went on to win the championship that year, and Jordan set his sights on next season. So for the 1985-1986 season, not really much to speak of. The next season, Jordan came on strong. He managed to make a full recovery and play all 82 games at 40 minutes per game. Jordan wasn't about to let an injury to a promising young basketball star ruin his career. He played like he had something to prove and ended the season with an amazing 37.1 points per game, which is the highest scoring average of his entire NBA career. He also won the 1987 Slam Dunk Contest, and the first time the world would see Jordan's full potential above the rim. For the second straight year, the Bulls would lose to the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs without winning a single game. But the time for the Bulls had yet to come. The 1980s were dominated by the Celtics and the Lakers. A developing young Bulls team was no match for them, even if it is Michael Jordan. This is also the first year Jordan had serious MVP consideration, but ended up falling short and losing the vote to Magic Johnson. Again, this was the era for the Celtics and Lakers, but Jordan and the Bulls would soon start setting the scene for their own era. His major accomplishments for this year were his 37.1 points per game scoring title, his slam dunk championship, his amazing recovery from the previous season, and this was the first time he was seriously considered in the MVP voting. 1988 is what I view as a turning point. This was the year that Michael Jordan became somewhat of a household name, fueled by his famous free throw line dunk at the Slam Dunk Contest. This dunk reflects the Air Jordan logo, which would soon become his symbol. He would also hold another scoring title at 35.0 points per game. Perhaps his biggest accomplishment of the year was his first MVP selection, edging out Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. In the playoffs, the Bulls finally made it to the second round, but lost to the Pistons, the beginning of a new rivalry. The Pistons would make it to the finals, only to lose to the Lakers. But by the end of this year, the world would know that Michael Jordan was something special and that the Bulls were a team to watch. So his highlights for this season were yet another scoring title, his first MVP selection, finally winning a playoff series, and his famous free throw line dunk and the slam dunk title. In 1989, Jordan was playing at a higher level than anyone knew possible. He won another scoring title at 32.5 points per game. His three-point percentage was at an all-time high, and he even upped his rebounding and assist numbers to 8 per game each. Scottie was getting better too, but in the end, the 1989 season was somewhat of a letdown for Bulls fans. Jordan lost the MVP vote to Magic Johnson once again, opted out of the slam dunk contest with nothing left to prove, and the team finished 6th in the East and were matched up against the 3rd seed Cavaliers. Now the Bulls maintained their confidence because I think this was one of the years LeBron was in Miami. This series actually provided the first big-time clutch performance for Jordan. In the last game of the series, he pulled up for a mid-range jump shot. It later became known as the shot.
Let's go, Chuck! Let's go!
This shot gave us a glimpse of what Jordan can do in big-time situations when everything is on the line. The Bulls would make it to the conference finals that year and unfortunately lose yet again to the Pistons, bringing the rivalry into full swing. The Pistons went on to beat the Lakers in the finals, which would end the era of the Celtics and Lakers just as the 80s came to a close. The floor was open for another dynasty to emerge, and the Pistons and the Bulls were prime candidates. Some of the major points of the 1988-1989 season were yet another scoring title, good general stats, the shot, and they made it to the conference finals. Not much changed in the next season. Michael Jordan won the scoring title at 33.6 points per game, but he lost the MVP vote to Magic Johnson once again, and this time even came in behind Charles Barkley. The Bulls made it to the conference finals where they would lose to the Pistons in Game 7. The Pistons would go on to win the title yet again. The Bulls were stuck. They were just short of greatness and couldn't seem to make that extra step. The Pistons were standing in their way and seemingly unbeatable. The biggest points of this season were another scoring title, and again, he made it to the conference finals. The next year, Michael Jordan and the Bulls went from good to great. At this point, Scottie Pippen had been improving each year and was finally at a level where he could be a major contributor to a championship team. The Bulls had accumulated a number of contributing players now, such as John Paxson, B.J. Armstrong, and Horace Grant. They were also led by their head coach, Phil Jackson. The team had all the pieces they needed, and if Michael Jordan were able to keep up his incredible level of play, they would have a legitimate shot at a title this year. And Jordan did just that, winning another scoring title at 31.5 points per game, keeping the rest of his stat line healthy, winning his second MVP ahead of Magic Johnson, and finishing the season with a record of 61-21. The Bulls were met again in the playoffs by their rivals, the Detroit Pistons, which they had fallen to the past 2 years, but this time, the outcome was different. The Bulls were not only victorious, but beat them in 4 straight games in the conference finals. The Bulls would move on to the finals and beat the Lakers 4-1 to become the new NBA champions. This series brought us an iconic moment where Jordan went up for a dunk, switched hands, and turned it into a layup all before landing, showing us yet another thing that nobody thought to be possible. This outcome was thought of as the end of the Magic and Lakers dynasty and the start of the Jordan Bulls dynasty. So included in the long list of achievements for this season is another scoring title, an MVP, defeating some rivals, a famous switch hands layup, an NBA championship, but most importantly, the start of a dynasty. '92 was more of the same. They had a system that worked and didn't want to change a thing. Jordan won his second straight MVP this year, a great accomplishment, though slightly lessened because Magic Johnson was no longer in the league. The Bulls had the best record at 67-15. Jordan's scoring slipped a bit to 30.1 points per game, likely due to the improvement of players around him and some of the weight taken off his shoulders, but this was still enough to win him yet another scoring title. And the season's performance continued into the playoffs, where they beat the Heat, Knicks, Cavaliers, and Trailblazers to win their second consecutive title. An iconic Michael Jordan moment was brought to us by the final series where Jordan made 6 three-pointers in an incredible performance, where all he could do after that was shrug. In 1992, the Summer Olympics were held in Barcelona. It was the first time NBA players were allowed to participate. All the NBA teams came together to represent the United States in what would soon be called the Dream Team. The U.S. beat each opponent by an average of 44 points and took home the gold medal. This was Jordan's second Olympic gold medal after having played in the 1984 Olympics as an amateur. So the summary for this year includes a scoring title, an MVP, the NBA's best record at 67-15, the shrug, an Olympic gold medal, and of course, the NBA championship. At this point, it was undeniable that the Bulls were the best team in the league, but were they one of the best teams of all time? Winning 2 titles in a row was done by the Pistons in the prior 2 years, and done by the Lakers 2 years before that, but winning 3 in a row was something that hadn't been done since the Celtics did it in the 1960s. This is what the Bulls set out to do in the 1992-1993 season. The regular season was promising, but didn't seem to be as certain as the previous one. Jordan led the league in scoring for the 7th consecutive year, but fell short to both Charles Barkley and Hakeem Olajuwon in the MVP voting. The Bulls also finished 3rd overall in the regular season, but when the playoffs came around, Michael Jordan and the Bulls were just as good as they ever were, beating the MVP Charles Barkley and the Suns in the finals to win their 3rd consecutive title and proving that they are in fact one of the best teams in NBA history. So the most notable things for this season were his 7th consecutive scoring title, and of course, the three-peat. With such an incredible run for the past 3 years, the expectations for the 1994 season couldn't be higher. Anything short of a title would be a major disappointment. The 1995 season was an odd one for Jordan. He was only on the Bulls at the end of the season and the playoffs. The first part of the season, of course, he played for the Toon Squad, but decided to return to the NBA after a motivational victory.
You know, he probably doesn't even have it anymore, guys.
Michael, do you hear that? They don't think you can play the game anymore.
There's only one way to find out.
The Bulls finished that season without an impressive record and lost to the Magic in the second round of the playoffs. But Jordan did come back, and some strong performances showed the world that he may be able to return to his former greatness. His achievements for this season, his return to basketball, and his Toon Squad victory. The 1995-1996 season brought everything right back on track. Another scoring title at 30.4 points per game, another MVP, the best regular season record ever at 72-10. But with the scoring title, an MVP, and the best regular season ever, it was almost certain that they would win the title. And they did. His achievements for this year are going back to the scoring titles, a great return, the best regular season ever at 72-10, an MVP, and an NBA championship. The 1996-1997 season provided yet another scoring title at 29.6 points per game, but no MVP. That was won by Karl Malone this year. The regular season record wasn't quite as good as the prior year, but still very impressive at 69-13. The Bulls were met this year in the finals against the Utah Jazz led by Karl Malone and John Stockton. This series would provide a career-defining moment for Michael Jordan known as the flu game. It was reported that Michael Jordan had flu-like symptoms going into Game 5 when the series was tied 2-2. Whoever would win this game would be at a distinct advantage and likely win the series. It was unclear what kind of performance Jordan would have under such adverse conditions, but one thing that's certain is Jordan can lead his team when he is needed. He ended the night with 38 points and a victory over the Jazz that would put them up 3-2 in the series. The Bulls won the next game and became the 1997 NBA champions. Even after such a long career of doing things that nobody thought possible, he continued to exceed expectations. The important things of this season were his scoring title, the best season record in the league, the flu game, and the second championship in a row. If winning 3 straight titles cemented the Bulls as one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history, one can only imagine what doing it twice would mean. Jordan finished with his 10th and final scoring title at 28.7 points per game. The Bulls and the Jazz would tie for the best record in the regular season, 62-20, and Jordan would receive his 5th and final MVP. The Bulls would meet the Jazz in their finals appearance, but this time, Jordan didn't have a flu game. but fittingly, he did score the game-winning shot to win the series and give the Bulls their final championship to this day. They had accomplished a three-peat for the second time. The last shot of Michael Jordan's Bulls career was a game-winning jump shot. The notable things of this season were his final scoring title, a great season record, his final MVP, his final shot as a Chicago Bull, and his final NBA championship. The 2001-2002 season would mark the first of 2 years that Michael Jordan would spend as a Washington Wizard. People didn't like seeing him out of a Bulls uniform, and thought that the game-winning shot to win the finals was a fitting end to his career. But looking at these 2 seasons objectively, they were actually impressive. Of course he didn't play in the way we had all become accustomed to, but you have to remember, he was 38 years old at this time, and for a player of this age, he put up really good numbers and had some memorable performances, including a game he scored 51 points to become the oldest player to ever score above 50, and even followed this game up with a 45-point game that was 3 assists shy of a triple-double. What could be said about Jordan's 2001-2002 season? He was old, but he was still good. The 2002-2003 season was Jordan's actual last year of professional basketball. By the end of the season, he was 40 years old. During the season, he became the only player above 40 years old to score above 40 points. Again, not too much to say about this season, except that he was even older, but he was still good. After analyzing all 15 seasons, I've come to the conclusion that Michael Jordan's 1990-1991 season is in fact his best season. This is the year where they showed the world that they're not just another really good team, but one of the best. When Jordan first joined the Bulls a few years earlier, they weren't a very good team. They wouldn't commonly make it to the playoffs, and if they did, they were eliminated early on. But the team grew and became better. They made necessary additions while still allowing the existing players time to grow. But after they had the team and the talent needed to win the title, they still needed to find a way to push themselves to the next level. They had lost consistently to the Pistons, and this was the year they were finally able to get past them. And they didn't limp past them, they rolled over them in a 4-0 series. And once that was done, they were forced to play the Lakers in the finals. The team that had ruled the league ever since Jordan entered it. The team that possessed the player that Jordan would consistently lose to in MVP voting. They were able to beat them in the finals even though the Bulls had never been there before and the Lakers had been there more than anyone. I'm interested to hear what other people say about this. I know a popular opinion has to be that the 1995-1996 season is their best season. This is the one where everyone had forgotten about him. Everyone had wished he would come back, but there was major doubt if he ever would, and even if he did, there was doubt if he would ever rise to the level he once was. He not only came back, he came back in full force, and had the best season record ever in the history of the NBA, and won the championship. This was a close second for me, but I think a big part of why this season was so impressive is because he was able to return to a level of play he once was at. Now, more impressive than that is getting to that level originally, which is why I chose the earlier season in the first championship. So let me know what you think. 1990-1991 season, 1995-1996 season, or one of the other 13 seasons? I'd be interested to know. Thank you for watching. If you like this video and want to see more in a similar style, be sure to subscribe by clicking the logo so you know when I upload a new one.